reading 48 Laws of Power. This is what we're reading, guys. I know. The reason we're reading this book is because I haven't met a single person who's read this book that I thought was a good human being. However, I am an educated individual, and I know that knowledge itself is amoral. It is neither good nor bad. It is how we use knowledge that makes us good or bad. And the best thing I could do for myself is to read the book. Because ultimately, the best lessons we ever learn are from our enemies and people we don't like. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to read this book. If only just to prove that I'm right, that this book is poison and everybody that's reading it is an awful individual. And so that's what we're reading. So far, I read the preface. Is it preface? Is it preface? What is it? I never know how to say that word. I read the preface. Read the preface, whatever. I read that part. I read chapter 1. I learned the first law, and I'm pretty much gonna do a series about what I read and what I think about each law. I don't think I'm gonna do all 48 laws of power because that's 48 videos and that would be redundant and waste of time for everybody. But I am gonna read. I'm probably gonna pick and choose the laws I think are the most impactful, the ones that can benefit me the most and naturally benefit my readers the most. But if there's any law that you want to hear me really outline and discuss, drop it in the comments so that I make sure that I bookmark that and come back to you guys with vital information. Of course, you can continue to email me. I haven't had an email from you guys in a minute. So yeah, be sure to email me, reach out to me that way. And yeah. So the preface was pretty good. So even the beginning, okay, I like Robert Greene. We actually have the same literary degree. We both studied literature, and so I always like how he comes at his works because he definitely comes at it with that literary perspective. He typically uses historical criticism in order to provide evidence for his teachings and his thoughts, and this is no different. He does that here. He pretty much relies on about great historic events spanning about 3,000 years to act as evidence and examples for the laws that he puts out. Of course, there are 48 laws of power here. There's never outshine the master. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. Conceal your intentions always. Always say less than necessary. It says so much depends on reputation. Guard it with your life. Court attention at all costs. Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. Make other people come to you. Use bait if necessary. Win through your actions, never through argument. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky. Learn to keep people dependent on you. Use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. Appeal to other people's self-interest, never to their, pose as a friend, work as a spy. Crush your enemy totally. Use absence to increase respect and honor. Do not build fortress to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous. Do not commit to anyone. What the hell? Okay. Play a sucker to catch a sucker. So even on the surface here, you see that you can see why I can feel that this book is a very dangerous thing to have in the wrong hands. Because if the person that's reading this book doesn't come at it with a pure heart, and I mean, how can you have a pure heart and want power? But we do, right? You can. I'm gonna take that back. You can have a pure heart and want power, because you can say, I want power so that I can free my family and friends. I want power so that I can redistribute it in a way that's more fair to people, or fair and that allows people more social mobility, or whatever the case. So our desires and intentions of power can be different. They don't have to be evil, right? And how we exercise power is dependent on the user, right? It depends a lot on the subtlety of the power. And so even in a preface, I had to stop and say, maybe I misjudged this whole thing. Maybe the person that is actually actively quoting the work is probably because they're not so good at applying the work, and they come off very snakish, right? Because already in the very beginning, he talks about power in a way, and he said, so he begins by saying, like the aristocracy, right? Kings, queens, courtship, and he says, they had to serve their masters, but they seemed to fawn if they curried favor too obviously. The other courtiers around them would notice and act against them. And so you have to be very subtle. You have to appear the paragon of excellence. You have to outwit and outthwart your own opponents in the subtlest of ways. So anybody that's outwardly saying like, oh, crush your enemy, and of course any normal human being is going to be like, snake. Snake. So the people that I probably run into that outwardly quoted this book that I didn't like, which is everyone that's probably said this to me, for some reason I don't like them very much, I don't respect them very much, it's probably because they have struggled to gain, maintain, and control power in a way that makes them, it's probably because they talk too damn much, but whatever. So I've already started to have to break down the implicit biases that I've worked up against this work in my mind. I've had to do it. Now, we do know that Robert Greene studies seduction, manipulation, toxicity, and this is no different. If you haven't seen my video about the art of seduction, you can go check it out. It's very popular, so go check it out. But this is no different. He says, instead of using coercion and outright treachery, the perfect courtier got his way through seduction, charm, deception, and subtle strategy, always planning several moves ahead. And then he also he really tries to break down, like even he like directly, at one point he directly talks to people like me, people who think that we shouldn't even study this, it's ultimately dangerous. And he says, to some people, the notion of consciously playing power games, no matter how indirect, seems evil, asocial, a relic of the past. They believe they can opt out of the game by behaving in ways that have nothing to do with power. You must be aware of such people, for while they express such opinions outwardly, they're often among the most adept players of power. So he says that that's our strategy of maintaining power. Okay. He also says that another strategy of the supposed non-player is to demand equality in every area of life. Everyone must be treated alike, whether their status and strength. But if to avoid the taint of power, you attempt to treat everyone equally and fairly, you will confront a problem that some people do certain things better than others. Treating everyone equally means ignoring their differences. If you behave this way, he says, you're actually deploying another power strategy, redistributing people's rewards in a way that you determine. And then he said there's a different way we do it. We try to do the game of perfectly honest, right? I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be straightforward. And I was like, that's kind of me. That's kind of me. I like to be very honest. I like to speak my opinion outwardly. It's not my best act. But it says, being perfectly honest will inevitably hurt and insult a great many people, some of whom will choose to injure you in return. He says, in truth, the use of honesty is indeed a power strategy intended to convince people of one's noble, good-hearted, selfless character. It is a form of persuasion, even a subtle coercion. So what I'm getting here, so already we're in the beginning of the book, y'all. But what I'm understanding from this is that even if you've never studied the book, you've never read the book, you don't do the book, we have naturally, and we're born with certain behaviors to help bring us to an advantageous position. Babies cry to get our attention, right? So we do certain things in the game of life to put ourselves in a better position, even if you aren't consciously acting in a malicious or deceptive way. our natural instincts sometimes are manipulative. And I've even had to check myself with this before. I've had to really think about my actions in a better way. And I was like, yeah, sometimes, you know, I have behaved manipulatively. And I've even tried to like, and now like I even make a more conscious effort to be like, you know what, I want this person to make their decision based on free will. I don't want to invite my opinion in. But you know, that's a dangerous game. You might as well, you know, play the game to your advantage, if you can. So yeah, we already naturally do certain things to attain power, to keep power, and to maintain power. So it's inevitable. You might as well play the game. And if you're gonna play a game, well then you should study the rule book so that you can win. And I can't really argue with that. So he says, instead of struggling against the inevitable, which is the game, instead of arguing and whining and feeling guilty, it is far better to excel at power. In fact, the better you are at dealing with power, the better friend, lover, husband, wife, and person you become. By following the route of the perfect courtier, you learn to make others feel better about themselves, becoming a source of pleasure to them. So again, like I said at the beginning, it really depends on how we like utilize power. And this is a side note, if you've ever noticed certain people get just a little bit of power, they be acting crazy as hell. They've never had it. Like that's why some people, you be like, girl, you taking this job a little serious today. Like, so people have to learn how to get power, but they also need to learn how to maintain power and to use power in such a way that it doesn't negatively impact everyone around you, because like it says, you can create a lot of enemies inadvertently, right? So he said the game of power is inescapable. Better to be an artist than a denier or a bungler. So he says just do it. Just use it in a way that works for you and your personal intentions, right? Power's crucial foundation is the ability to master your emotions. So this is his first tip. And he hasn't even got to the laws yet. He just tells us like this is what he must believe is like at the foundation of everything, right? Mastering your emotion. He said the emotional response to a situation is the single greatest barrier to power. A mistake that will cost you a lot more than any temporary satisfaction you might gain by expressing your opinions, your feelings, right? He says emotion just clouds your reason. And if you can't see the situation clearly, you can't prepare for it, and you're going to respond with any degree of control. So he's like, the first thing you need to do before you even get to the laws, master your emotions. And I think that's just so incredible. I sit in awe sometimes of people's inability to master their emotions. I remember I was working and this girl was like making like $9. She was like I was making 12, which was she was making 9. She was a grown woman. And she was like, yeah, I used to own this really lucrative trucking company, but then I got in a divorce and I got so sad, and I just gave it away. I just didn't want to deal with it. I couldn't imagine working, and I just didn't want to do it. And she's like, so I downsized completely, went broke, and now I'm working here. And I was just like shocked. It was unbelievable to me. But that is like maybe one of the strongest examples I can see of like master your emotions. And I think that, you know, even like relationships that we allow to play out just way too long because we love them, right? Master your emotions. If that person don't love your ass back, you look stupid. Get out your feelings and get in your bag. You know, we hear it all the time. So that was one that really stood out to me. Just like the emotional response to a situation. I was okay. He ain't like, you know, he's not crazy. He has some good stuff to say here. And so what else comes up? Sorry, this thing. I'm not so used to using this. So then he says, also anger. It's the most destructive of emotional responses. It clouds your vision the most. He says, if you're trying to destroy an enemy who has hurt you, Far better to keep him off guard by feigning friendliness than showing your anger. He also said, be careful about how you express your emotions, and most important, never allow them to influence your plans and strategies in any way. So how you feel should never come up. How you feel should never come up. Compartmentalize that shit. Put that shit to the side. Let that shit right in the back. Put it in the trunk if you got to, but it should not be like influencing your thought process. And then he says there's two things to do if you want to have power. Always have an eye towards the future and always have a face towards the past. And he says for the future, no days on alert, nothing should catch you by surprise because you're constantly imagining problems before they arise. He says the further you see, the more steps ahead you plan, the more powerful you become. He said also to look backward is to educate yourself constantly. You look to the past to learn from those who came before you. He said you begin by examining mistakes you have made in the past, the ones that have most grievously held you back. You analyze them in terms of the 48 laws of power, and you extract from them a lesson and an oath. This is the oath. I shall never repeat such a mistake. I shall never fall into such a trap again. And so, I ain't gonna lie, y'all. By this point in the work, I was like, okay. Boomses, out, asses, out, boomses, out, asses, out. Right. I was into it. So, my implicit bias is already kind of melting away, as typically happens when we start attaining more knowledge about a subject. The other thing he says is to end this, you must learn to wear many masks and keep a bag full of deceptive tricks. Deception and masquerade should not be seen as ugly or immoral. All human interaction requires deception on many levels, and in some ways what separates humans from animals is our ability to lie and deceive. So he says everybody's doing it. I mean, that was his whole, everybody's doing it, you might as well do it, everybody's doing it, which isn't a great reason to do anything. And ultimately I hate to lie. It just feels horrible. It feels horrible to do it, but it is one of the strategies that allows people to maintain social order, right? You have to lie sometimes. You have to stretch the truth and attain a mask, even if that's not who you really are, which is uncomfortable and disappointing because you would hope that at least one person can know the real you, but say la vie. He said deception is a developed art of civilization and the most potent weapon in the game of war. He said if deception is the most potent weapon in your arsenal, then patience in all things is your crucial shield. Patience will protect you from making moronic blunders. Now, where he lost me, he regained me, because I was like, deception, I just don't like it, right? I just don't like to have to feel like I'm not telling a full truth or manipulating. It sucks. But what I do have to learn, something I've been really learning, and I think probably all of us has over this pandemic, it's probably the art of patience. Like, all things in its time, all things run their course. Be patient and await, the success, and be still and allow it to come to you, right? He says patience is the supreme virtue of the gods, who have nothing but time. Everything good will happen. The grass will grow again if you give it time and see several steps into the future. Impatience, on the other hand, only makes you look weak. It is a principal impediment of power. So be patient, he said. He said when you're patient, you're more godlike, which is I like that. I like that, like deception. And I guess that, you know what, considering like a lot of my study, a lot of my time is really set in prayer, really set in spirituality, really trying to bring my spirit into alignment. And one of my greatest, it grinds my gears, is that no matter how spiritually aligned you become, you still live on this planet with these people who are not practicing those spiritual principles, right? So what I'm saying is, you could be like, I'm all love and light, and then all of a sudden somebody like flicks you off, cuts you off, and you're like, and curses you down, and you're just like, girl, I'm trying to be saved, and you trying to bring me somewhere I ain't trying to go, right? And so Deception and patience goes hand in hand. Use deception as your sword, patience as your shield. And so I think a lot of times I always feel like I'm consistently like this, but it's because I'm not swinging back. And you gotta do both. So, you know, lesson already learned, and we're only a few pages in the book, and I'm already learning things, figuring it out in my mind. He says, power is a game. Power is a game. He says, do not judge your opponents by their intentions, but by the effect of their actions. What does it matter if another player, your friend or rival, intended good things and had only your intentions at heart, if the effects of his actions lead to so much ruin and confusion? You must learn to inwardly laugh each time you hear this, and never get caught up engaging someone's intentions and actions through a set of moral judgments that are really an excuse for the accumulation of power. In the end, you will appreciate the politeness of those you are playing with more than their good and sweet intentions. So he also says it's a game, but we should come to the game like ladies and gentlemen. He says, like, observe the rules of the game and take nothing personally. And you play with strategy. You observe your opponent's moves, and you just try to stay as calm as you can, and train your eyes to follow the results of their moves, their inward circumstances, and don't be distracted by anything else. He says, half of your mastery of power comes from what you do not do. This is good. What you do not do. What you do not allow yourself to get dragged into. Half of your power comes from what you do not do. Do you hear me? You hear it right now? You hear me? Alright? Sit your ass down. No offense to you. No offense to you. But this is what I see a lot, especially in like the realms of dating. You ain't gotta entertain every man that come to you. You don't have to do that. You don't have to listen. You don't have to answer every call that come in. Like, half of your power is in what you do not do, what you do not accept. Somebody's telling you something that you really don't like. You don't have to compromise. The powerful don't compromise. And though it may feel like you lost at the moment, patience is a virtue. Be patient, baby. Be patient. He says, the value of a thing sometimes lies in not what one attains with it, but in what one pays for it. So what it costs you. So think about, like, when you help somebody, think about what's it going to cost you to do what you want to do. He says, never waste valuable time or mental peace of mind on the affairs of others. That is a price too high to pay. He says, recognize motivations and see through the cloud of dust with which people surround their actions. And he says, never discriminate as to whom you study and whom you trust. Never trust anyone completely, and study everyone, including friends and loved ones. So, yeah. That's the preface. That's the preface, y'all. So already this book is gonna be something, okay? It's gonna be something. It's gonna be deep. And so even going into this, we already have to relieve ourselves from the fact, like, yes, people that I've met that read this book, that quote this book, are kind of lame, kind of corny, kind of loser. Let's just, as our little community, agree, like, when we're out in the world, we'll never say, you know, the 48 laws of power. Like, go away. Go away. That's probably like the best way not to tip your hand. Don't tell them what you're reading. I always judge people off what they read. If someone says that's their favorite book and I want to know that person, I go read the book. If I meet a man and he doesn't own any books, I'm judging him. I don't want to date him. And I also even opened the book to make sure that it was actually read. Because if that spine ain't broke, you ain't read it, and you're impersonating as a reader, and I'm judging that too. So yeah, let's read 48 Laws of Power, guys. Let's read it together. Go get a copy. Go to get a copy. I tried to get it for less because I just didn't really want to read it. I tried to go get it from Half Price Bookstore because I was not paying $26 at Barnes & Noble. But you know, it's $14.99 on Amazon or whatever like that. Wherever you get you a copy, get you a copy. Let's read this together, and make sure you subscribe, follow me, like, comment, tell me what laws you want to talk about the most, what law that you really want to get into. Let me know, and we're going to get into this. I'm excited. Stay tuned for the next video where we go over law number 1. See y'all next time. Oh wait, check out www.litforbooks.com. I am finally listing all of my literary papers there. Also have my book there. I hope that you guys purchase a copy. The literary resources are free. All my papers are free, but I do sell children's books, so get one for your niece or nephew and just support the movement, the community that I'm trying to grow here, guys. Please. Thank y'all, and I'll see y'all next time.